the whole idea of what Teach is so ensconced in Johnson's book BS that nobody can tell the story of Blackbeard without telling mostly BS.
Welcome, everyone, to Archaeology Arcade, the online program of the Florida Public Archaeology Network. I'm Mike. I'm based out of our coordinating center in Pensacola, Florida. As always, I am joined today by my colleague Tristan out of our FPAN office in Tallahassee. Tristan, how are you doing? Are you ready to play some pirates? I am doing great, and I'm ready to learn all about pirates. I'm sure this game is a perfect representation of how that actually worked. Yeah, we'll see. We'll let our special guest for today's program, Baylus Brooks, be the judge of that. Baylus, how are you doing?
Doing great. How you doing?
Pretty good. I'm so excited to have you on. The game that we're playing today is called Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag. I'm going to give a quick description from Steam. The developer for this game is Ubisoft Montreal. It's also published by Ubisoft. And here's the description. The year is 1715. Pirates rule the Caribbean and have established their own lawless republic where corruption, greediness, and cruelty are commonplace. Among these outlaws is a brash young captain named Edward Kenway, and I guess that's the protagonist that we will be playing throughout this game. So yeah, Baylus, this is a great subject, and I was so excited to bring you on because you've actually written several books about pirates, including The Quest for Blackbeard. Can you give us a little bit about your background? Tell us a little bit about yourself, and then what kind of work you've done with studying piracy and what got you interested in it in the first place?
Well, that's a long story, but there was I was born in North Carolina and in the 60s, and back then if anything when North Carolina did to do with the 60s had to do with Blackbeard. It was the most popular thing at the time. Not now, but it was then. Of course, that had to do with the Disney movie coming out in 1952, just recently. The decade before, it made Blackbeard the most popular name in anything for a couple of decades. And so I grew up with Blackbeard all the time. I didn't really become a huge pirate enthusiast, but I did become a history enthusiast, and I went to school and finally became a professional historian. And but I accidentally fell upon the family records for Edward Teach in Jamaica. And I knew that I was going to have to write about pirates then. So I had to study up real fast and get my background on pirates up to speed. And, but I had played a pirate at a festival before that, but I never got into the history of them until that point. But, yeah. Yeah. So for people, you have a website, you have a great website with a lot of information about pirates and some of the primary documents. And as we play through this game, I'd love to ask you more about some of that research that you've done. You mentioned Edward Teach. And of course, for people who don't know, that was the real name of Blackbeard. Right. So if you guys are ready, I'll go ahead and get us started in this game and we'll chat about pirates as we play through. Yeah, let's do it. And this is considered, so this is 1750, so this is 1715 is when this game takes place, which historians refer to as the golden age of piracy. Yep. Although I'm sure for some people back then, it wasn't quite golden. Yeah, not so great. I didn't know pirates had hoods back then. Cool.
Yeah. So this is the Assassin's Creed franchise. So they have, I don't even know how many games they have at this point, but I remember playing the first. Was this The Matrix? This looked like something more in The Matrix.
Well, that's some of the overarching stories. You're going back and reliving your ancestors' pasts or something.
Okay.
Through the wonders of technology. So that's probably what that's going on there.
Yeah, I remember playing the first Assassin's Creed back when it came out. Oh, here we go. Oh boy. So June 1715, and obviously about to shoot a cannon.
That would have been the month before that hurricane, the big one that wrecked all those
Oh yeah, the treasure plate fleet wrecks, which are off the East Coast. Yeah, actually, at our museum here in Pensacola, we have a few artifacts from that fleet wreck.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Okay, it's gonna give me some basic instructions on what to do. It says I need to go reach the ship's wheel. Obviously, my guy's taking his time.
Yeah, he's not in any hurry.
All right. What do you think of the ship so far, Bayless?
Yeah, looks pretty cool. Looks pretty cool. They dropped the hoods though. They don't have the hoods anymore.
Maybe he hasn't got it. Oh, this guy's having a bad day.
Looks like the main character in the other ship has a hood. But
yeah.
You know, the ship's gonna be moving pretty well. You know, and then there's this battle going on. I mean, there's tons of reasons to lose your footing. So
right. Yeah, this guy's got some wonderful sea legs. All right, let's see here. So I'm learning the controls here. Tristan, I'm sure he'll make fun of me as we play through it. Okay, there we go. It gives me some instructions.
I've seen at least 2 ships now.
It says fire a cannons, hold the right button on the mouse and then move it to aim and then press shoot. Okay, all right, we'll see what. It's kind of like Sea of Thieves. I think it's sort of similar.
Now you're the whole ship, it seems.
Now I'm the whole ship.
Yeah.
All right, so it looks like they're British. Those are our British flags. So we've got a few different ships. I guess I'll just shoot at them. And good thing we have GPS on this ship.
Yeah.
The wheel looks good.
Radar.
Yeah.
That's weird.
Oh, one shot. That was easy.
And you're about to hit ground. There it is.
And so this ship right here looks like quite a large warship that we're going up against right now.
Yeah.
Or did I hit the ground?
You did briefly, yeah.
Oh, I did? Okay. And so, Bayless, can you talk a little bit about, in terms of like pirate battles, is this something that would have looked like in 1715, or is this a little bit too much action?
No, I think this is pretty close. I'm not the expert on these. I mean the other guy. Oh God, he's an ex-Navy SEAL. Oh, I can't remember his name. He's written a bunch of books, and he's the expert on tactics.
Oh, tactics,
okay.
Yeah.
Ship maneuvers and stuff. He lived the life, you know.
I mean, is that Patrick O'Brien?
No, Pat. I don't know.
I can't remember his name.
Is that what I'm thinking of?
I think I know what you're talking about. He wrote a book. I can put the link to that in the description. I can't look it up right now, but
he's written several books on that. Yeah.
Right. And so, Bayless, can you tell us a little bit about like who Blackbeard was exactly?
The King's Navy.
Well, Blackbeard, from what I found out, Blackbeard is not exactly who we thought he was because, Charles Johnson wrote his entire history, and everybody's had learned what he was just from that one book, which it turned out to be a bunch of BS. And Blackbeard was actually a very wealthy guy. His family had a plantation where they owned slaves. He was well off. He was not a poor guy, and he joined the Royal Navy at one time. But basically, to get home, he got stuck in England because he was a slave trader, and with Jonathan Deeble, and Jonathan Deeble ended up going back to England and then basically giving up his ship. So Teach was stuck in England. What do? You join the Navy and serve for a year so you can get home. And he ended up staying, though. He served for his year, and then at the end of his enlistment, he decided to re-up. He got promoted in the service. So that's all we know. We don't know anything past that point. But I assume he served for a year or two, maybe a couple more years. And so he was a wealthy man. He had position. He wasn't an officer, I don't think, but he was somebody who was considered to be. You could tell he had money because he had four times the chest size of anybody else on board, which means he had all these goods and stuff. And you had to pay rent for your chest, by the way. You had to pay so much money to have that chest on board. And we just know by the amounts that they put there that he paid 4 times what everybody else did. So,
and this was on a naval ship, or when he was when he was actually a pirate?
Naval ship. Yeah.
Naval ship. Okay. And who were they paying? They were just paying the British government, the crown.
Yeah. They were, well, the ship had its own accounting system, and you had to have an accountant on board to take care of all the necessaries, and so they had to pay certain monies, or they would take it out of their fees, basically, what they were going to be paid. So they they weren't given the money yet; they just took it out of it.
Right. And you mentioned that one of the things that they mentioned in this game is that they said that I don't know if you got that cutscene or not, but she mentioned there being a privateer. Can you talk about what privateers were exactly?
Well, privateers were hardly distinguishable from pirates, except that they were actually given sanction by the official government of the time. If you were a British privateer, you were working for the British government. If you were a French privateer, you worked for the French government. But if you're a pirate, you generally don't work for anybody but yourself. But you do the same thing. Privateers, they could do it. It's kind of like today when we hired, what's the name of that place? Zaire Blackwater.
Right. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Like contractors, private contractors. Right.
The privateers are contractors. Exactly. And you hire the contractor and they just basically go and do whatever they want, and Blackwater does what they want.
Right. Yeah.
Which has gotten the military in a lot of trouble. At least the Pentagon has gotten in a lot of trouble over that. But but they, same thing happened with privateers. England often had to defend what happened, that when they did something that probably wasn't exactly looked upon nicely. So,
well, and everyone else's privateers were pirates in the other side's eyes too, I assume, right?
If you're being attacked by these guys, I mean, you couldn't tell the difference between a privateer and a pirate.
I'm sure they always flew the flag of the country they were serving for, right?
Well, I guess that's you could buy that. But they didn't always fly the right flag. If they wanted you to believe that they were a Spanish ship and they were English, I mean, they would fly a Spanish flag,
right,
to fool you. And privateers didn't. They were supposed to not do stuff like that, but they did.
Yeah, right.
So,
and then one thing that we see just popped up is this treasure map. Have you, in all your research, come across any of these, quote unquote treasure maps? Because I think in every pirate movie, they're like a staple. They always have a pirate treasure map.
Nope, have never seen one.
Yeah,
probably never existed, but it's always fun to think about.
Good story,
right? And then I should mention too that we're live on Twitch. So anybody joining us, if you have any questions for Baylus or me or Tristan even, or if you have any comments, please just use the stream chat, and then we'll try to get to those as we play through this game.
Beak Archaeology mentioned there's a Netflix documentary. How does that rate as far as if people want more details? Does it rate pretty well as far as accuracy? Do you guys know?
You mean you're talking about the most recent one?
I assume so.
There was That one had the information about Teach's family, but you know what it was. There's the whole idea of what Teach is so ensconced in Johnson's book BS that nobody can tell the story of Blackbeard without telling mostly BS, and then they basically just plug in whenever they got some actual data somewhere. Because I gave actual citations for all the stuff I found. So they had to say, "Whoa, this is real," because we can look it up ourselves. And they have to plug it in, but they basically use the old story, and then they plug in whatever they find, just adding to the story. Well, the whole story is bogus. That's what I try to tell you. It's not real. You got to study. This guy was totally different. And
so why did it become? First, I guess we can start with that book by quote unquote Captain Charles Johnson, who wrote A General History of Pirates. What do we know about that book? Who actually wrote it? Can you kind of go on that a little bit more?
Well, the man who wrote it was most likely was named Nathaniel Mist. I mean, I say most likely, it was probably like a 95% chance it was him. He was basically a newspaper publisher at the time, and he was a Jacobite and a controversial newspaper publisher. So he was not exactly the most trustworthy guy to begin with. And so when he wrote this book, it looks mostly like he was trying to write it to make money, because he was in trouble with the English government at the time. He was always fined for what he did. He was arrested a few times. And so he was, he had to pay all these fines. And I did a little search in the records about the tax records and stuff after the time the book was published in 1724. Before 1724, he wasn't doing so good in the tax records. Mm-hmm. And then after 1724, he's all of a sudden getting better. He's making more money. So I'm thinking, it's not the best evidence, but it's kind of looks like he did well after the publication. Mm-hmm. And so obviously this book he wrote this book to make money, and he invented a few things, like any, I mean, I've written in historical fiction myself, and it's based on history, but at the same time you have to make stuff up. Like my novel involved time travel, and I'm sure that wasn't real, but I think 300 years from now somebody's going to dig up my book and go, "Oh my God, there was time travel." No, there wasn't. You're an idiot. Stop doing that. And it's but I was having fun. Right. I'd like to dream every once in a while myself. So I think that's basically what he did.
Right. But so we know, of course, like you said, that Nathaniel Mist, who wrote who you think and others also think, and I think there's like very convincing evidence that you've presented that is in fact who the author of that was.
Well, actually, it was Arnie Bialys-Chusky. He's the one that he's the one that uncovered the fact that Nathaniel Mist wrote the book.
Gotcha.
He wrote. I expanded on it a lot because I took off. That's my greatest strength, is taking something somebody else figured out and just expanding to the point where you just can't dispute it anymore.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's a process of history, though, right? I mean, how we look back on these things and build a stronger case for it. Yeah. But so, I mean, obviously, though, Blackbeard was a real person. Was Blackbeard really famous at the time? Was that why he chose to write about him? And why do you think that he, other than making money, is that the only reason why he made stuff up about Blackbeard, or was there a reason to kind of vilify him?
Blackbeard, one thing that I do know he did, he basically he turned himself into he became an actor. Basically, he decided that he didn't want to kill anybody if he could avoid it or get into battle, because he could also lose his own men as well. He could get killed himself. So he wanted to avoid battle at all costs.
Right.
And
understandable. Right.
Yeah, you don't want to die that, the first day out, I'm going to blow something up, well, that's not what they do. Anybody with brains, that's not what they do. I mean, that might be what the Confederacy did, but that's not what they did. Right. But it's I have a real problem with that. My mother's family was deep in the Confederacy. Anyway.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And I learned too much about it. You know what I mean? I'm a historian. I went so far. I just said, no, I can't do this anymore. It's killing me. But he didn't want to do that, and so he invented a way to stop. He had to frighten people to begin with before they even, right when they first met him. And he had to frighten them into like, oh, I'm not fighting that guy. Oh, hell no. Right. So he got into a red coat. I mean, this is a very, what do you call it? Superstitious, very superstitious time. And they believed in the devil, and, they believed the devil was in everything. And, he dressed up in a red coat because that made him look more like the devil. He grew a long beard because the devil. Most pirates really didn't like facial hair, from what I've heard anyway. I haven't really explored this myself, but I've read other articles where people were talking about that.
Well, that's understandable. As someone with facial hair, it's really pain to keep it up. You know?
Yeah.
They had lice and stuff, and
yes, lice, and there were many reasons not to have it, and but he decided to grow a long beard, which was odd for a pirate, and it made him a little bit more fearsome looking, especially when he braided it and put ribbons in it. We do believe he did that, and so he made himself up to look like a real demon, and it worked in his favor because he never really got into a battle. Most people quit. They just surrendered when they saw him. They put their hands up and said, "Okay, that's it. I'm not fighting you, man."
Sure. Yeah.
And he never killed anybody that we know of, until the battle in North Carolina. We never really. I've only heard about one instance where he treated somebody kind of roughly. He didn't kill them. He hung them on a yard arm and kind of dangled them there for a bit and dropped them. But never killed him. But he did. He was trying to get him to tell him where, I think it was like 6,000 pounds of gold and or treasures was. So of course he was, had a real good reason. You got way more money than I've seen in a long time. So I'm gonna really take you to the edge to tell me where it is. And but that was Christopher Taylor, by the way. But he was just good at that. He was a tactician. I mean, he served in the war for a while, in Queen Anne's War on a naval vessel. I mean, the guy had brains. He was well educated. He had sense, and he figured this was a good way to do what he needed to do. And so that gave him a legend. But when he captured a ship, he started to get kind of successful for a while, especially after he got the Concorde that became the Queen Anne's Revenge. He got that. He got popular, and in the newspapers, they were talking about this guy like he was a demon. So, I mean, it worked. He's dressed like a demon. The newspapers are talking about him like a demon. He's like, oh, it's kind of like, well, I didn't want to be that popular.
right.
But I kind of overdid the character too much, and now everybody thinks I'm a real bad guy.
Right.
So they came after him. But
and so can you talk about you obviously, like, there's issues with a general history of pirates, but what kind of documents have you looked at that kind of gives you that more accurate picture on what you're describing that's so different?
What's so different about what I did is that I did a genealogical study, and there were plenty of documents out there that is like Admiralty documents, and they've always been there. We can always look up the Admiralty documents, but the thing that the genealogical documents that I found, nobody had ever looked at those as far as looking for Blackbeard, and in fact, when I first found these documents, while I was looking for them, because I knew they were on Jamaica somewhere, so I called the Register General's office in Jamaica, and I asked them if they had a plat record for an Edward Teach, and I didn't think about the way I said it, that I'm calling up somebody in Jamaica asking about, do you have like a grant record for Blackbeard? Like they're going to laugh me out of and they did. The girl on the other end of the phone was like, Edward Teach. Like, oh shit, I shouldn't have said that. But anyway,
no, it's all good.
Yeah.
So she said no, there's no plat record. Found out why there was no plat record, but anyway. I said, okay, I'm not going to repeat that experience. So what I did was I took the records that I found, which I found them. They were online from the Family Search or the Latter-day Saints Church website, and they were online. All the family, the mother, the father, the stepmother, the children, his full sister, and his brothers, his half brothers and half sister. And everybody's names, I mean, the whole thing's there. So I put a family chart together because I've been doing genealogy for 40 years. So, I put the family chart together and I had a whole family chart of the family. So I sent an email to these guys at the Register General's office and I said, do you have any records on this family? you know, obviously I know they're there, so don't tell me they're not. You know, and I got an immediate response with 6 records.
Nice.
Wow.
And when I got the records, I looked at one of them. It was a deed in 1706, and it was a deed from Blackbeard himself to his father, to his stepmother, because his father had just died. And Edward Sr. just died. Edward Jr. inherited the plantation, and he had to give the plantation to his family so that they could survive, because he was going to be serving on the Windsor. He had said in that document that he served on the Windsor. And, you know, so that document basically was like the Holy Grail genealogy. It explained everything about the guy. It said he was in the Royal Navy. It said who his father was. It said who his stepmother was, his stepmother, when we know it's his stepmother, and his half brothers and sister. It mentioned, well, not that document, but another one mentioned another girl named Elizabeth that wasn't his sister, his full sister from his father's first marriage. And she was considered a child at the time. So the only thing I could assume was that this was Edward's daughter.
Oh, wow. So he may have actually had a child.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure he had a child, because she got married later to Dr. Henry Barham, but she didn't live long after that.
Oh, she didn't. So she never had. So they never had descendants then, or does he have any descendants that are still alive?
Not direct descendants of him. I don't think so.
Yeah, it's amazing. So why do you think? I mean, no one's really looked, and I think that's one of the really cool things that you looked at from a totally different kind of standpoint, the genealogical records. So like the probate records and the marriage records. I think a lot of historians don't look at stuff like that in these sort of studies. Why do you think that is?
Real quick, Mike, before we go on real quick, Mike, could you go ahead and turn off the sound and turn on subtitles?
Yeah, let me see if I can figure that out. Yeah, why don't you try to answer that, Baylus, and I'll try to figure that out.
I've often wondered that myself. I think because they don't feel like there's enough information in genealogical sources to use them. You know, when you find an admiralty record, which, you know, an admiralty record is kind of adversarial to begin with. So you're not going to actually find it. You're going to find a record that's very biased. But when you think about it, genealogical sources are really unbiased. I mean, who's gonna lie about getting born, or who's gonna lie about getting married to somebody? Mm-hmm. You know, you got married. It's just a matter. It's a statement of fact. I got married. Well, whatever. Screw it.
Yeah.
I got married to a woman. You know, and it's but if you say in an admiralty document, you say, "Oh, well, he attacked my ship and he tore this off," you know, the guy could be half lying about what happened.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so it's like, well, yeah, but he lost a bunch of stuff. Maybe he stole it, and he wants to get paid for it anyway. You know, cheat. People do it all the time. you know, I mean, look at the Republican Party.
Right.
you know, you can imagine this stuff happen on a regular basis. Mm-hmm. So admiralty records to me probably weren't the most reliable, but genealogy, at least in this case, worked out really well, because Jamaican records were remarkably complete throughout the latter 17th century and early 18th century. So it put together a real definitive picture of the family.
Right.
And I think that, well, I had one professor who basically threw the paper back at me. He's like, "Man, I tried reading it, but it's all genealogy. I don't know what you're saying." I'm looking at him like, "What are you, crazy? It's the same. It's history, man."
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
I mean, you know, just because it's genealogy, or just because you don't like figuring out whose second cousin once removed of this guy, you know, the terminology kind of blinds everybody about the cousin deal.
Right.
But that's not the point. You know, you're telling a story about a family and what their motivations were, where they came from. I mean, what kind of influences they had. I mean, to me, that's history. You should be telling that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I think, you hit it so right on the head. And the fact that, you know, these, you know, especially with pirates, they often are portrayed in certain ways, and people I think often forget that these were people that were making decisions, and they had connections back on land, and they had families, and it gets really to the really heart of who they were. So speaking of that, one of the characters I think we just met was Stede Bonnett. Can you tell us anything about who Stede Bonnett was?
Oh yeah, well, Stede Bonnett was a real messed up guy. He
he looked like it.
He was. Well, first of all, let me put it this way: he wasn't family with Edward Teach, but he was as close as you can get. He had a lot in common with the guy. For one thing, Stede Bonnet, he's kind of a descendant or a cousin of William Whetstone, who was the admiral in charge of the HMS Windsor at the time that Edward Teach served aboard her. So this guy had family who served with Teach. So they were kind of, Teach kind of had he kind of treated him like a brother, at least in the beginning, I think, because of that. I guess he got kind of blinded by the fact that, well, this guy's got some relation to me, or at least I should know this guy, or he's a Whetstone, so I got to treat him good, But so there was a relation. He's also Whetstone's daughter married Woodes Rogers too, by the way. So obviously there's a lot to do with these guys. They're all in a very close-knit community, even though they're spread out across the Atlantic. And so, Edward Teach was treated Stede Bonnet really well at first. And but when he first met Stede Bonnet, he had just attacked a Spanish warship, and he had absconded from Barbados with the vessel, and he got to the shores of Carolina, got into a battle with the warship, and got his ass beaten really bad. And so he comes back crawling and bleeding to the Bahamas, going, oh man, because he knows where the pirates are, in the Bahamas. And he's like, oh man, I had a battle with a warship. Yeah, I'm a tough guy. And everybody's kind of looking at him like, yeah, you don't look tough. But whatever, and but Teach kind of took him under his wing. He's like, well, hey, just because you're a Whetstone, all right, I'll do what I can to help you. Let me show you the ropes. And so he got with Teach for a while. Then they got together and went off and captured the La Concorde, not with Hornigold, by the way. He wasn't there. Hornigold might want to claim that he was there, but he's not there. And so him and Teach captured the ship. And but there's some indication when they did this, that if you read the French records, they talk about a possible dispute between Edward Teach and one of his pirate captains, which there's only two more between him and Richards, between Bonnett and Richards. So you're thinking it probably Bonnett, because Bonnett was a major in the Army. He was not a sailor, and he wasn't real equipped to do the work of a sailor. He had no experience at it at all. Probably didn't have sea legs at all. And so anyway, it sounded like the person in question was a little bit greedy about wanting to keep more of the slaves that they had found aboard the Concorde, and then Edward Teach was wanting to keep to begin with. And that was sort of when the rift began between him and Bonnett. If it's Bonnett, I'm sure it was Bonnett. I can't say for sure they were, but I believe that's when the rift began between them, because we see the rift getting wider as time goes on, especially when they got to the Bay of Honduras, and you've got Bonnett in his own ship at the time. He encounters the Protestant Caesar, Captain Wires or William Wires, or what his name is, vessel, and they encounter him, and William Wire basically dusted his butt, and he kind of ran off and said, found Teach in his big old ship, and he's like, yeah, well, like this guy I came across over in this process, he's heading back into the bay, and yeah, well, I almost kicked his butt, and blah, 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 blah. He's probably making up a huge story about all the wonderful stuff he did,
Pirates.
The guy, but William Wiard's the one who actually handed him his tail in a handbasket. But there was so Teach was said, okay, well, we can't let that go unanswered, so we got to go find the guy. They found him. They also found, they beat him. Of course, at this time it was Teach, not Bonnett.
Yeah,
and so they found him. They found out that he was from Boston. And he's like, and for some reason, I'm not really sure exactly why, except that Boston had hung the Samuel. Oh, what's his name? I'm drawing a blank on his name. Anyway, Samuel. What's his name? Pirate Samuel.
Yeah, it's not coming to me either. But anyways, Samuel something.
Yeah, Samuel something. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
the Wida. The shit. The Wida.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Bellamy. Sam Bellamy.
Sam Bellamy. Thank you.
Yeah.
And Boston had hung them, or at least just a few that had survived, and they hung them recently. And Teach was a little upset about that. So anytime he came across a ship from Boston, he basically burned the ship, I guess, as retaliation for what they did. And but he was real nice about it with Wire. He just took everybody off the ship and put them on the shores of what we think is now Belize, and which I'm thinking it was a nice place to go anyway.
Oh yeah, right. Yeah,
and except maybe in the 18th century. But,
yeah. It's nicer when there's resorts there,
and doctors. Yeah,
right. Yeah,
you don't have to worry about the nastiness.
Right.
The diseases,
dengue and malaria.
Yeah. Some bad things, to deal with. And so he put them on shore, and he basically said, okay, we're going to have to burn the ship because you're from Boston, and just can't let that go, So he took the ship out in the bay and he burned it. And anyway, what was I originally talking about?
We were mainly talking about who Steve Bonnett was and his connections to Blackbeard.
Yeah. And I went off on a huge tangent. Yeah. So I wouldn't be a good pirate captain either. I'd kind of get lost in the sea somewhere. Bonnett just proved himself to be a not really reliable person. And I think that, throughout the time with Teach, and then after they got to to Charleston and blockaded the harbor and, for medicines, obviously because everybody had been hanging out with too many women out in the
as pirates do,
Yeah.
Yeah. Although if you read the books, if you look at all the books that are available out there, including Colin Woodard's book on the Republic of Pirates, they all talk about how these guys just got the disease. And I'm like, no, you don't tell me pirates hadn't been making out with women for all their careers. I mean, they probably had syphilis long time ago, probably since they were at least maybe 14.
Right. Yeah. They started early then, I guess.
So many of them had probably developed into secondary, tertiary stage, possibly syphilis, which we've got some documents that show how bad it was and how even a guy that a contemporary of Edward Teach's, a doctor that Nathaniel Mr. Charles Johnson had talked about in his book. And he's got an entire book on they call it luz venera, I think, which is venereal disease type of pox. He's got an entire book on it.
Wow.
So, there's a lot of research out there. And the cure for it was mercury.
Right. They actually found at here in Pensacola Bay, they actually found some mercury on a shipwreck from 1559. And because I know, I think that's what they think too, is it was for medicinal. I know it was also used in extracting gold from ore in that process, but I think in this case they think it's for medicine.
Well, they found on the QAR, they found the urethral syringe.
Oh.
probably went in teaches,
right. Right. Yeah, it had to be painful. So speaking of the QAR,
they found mercury in it too.
Wow. So that's a Queen Anne's Revenge. Can you talk a little bit about more about how the Queen Anne's Revenge sank, and the work that's been done on it in terms of conservation or archaeology?
Oh yeah, they who originally found it was some treasure hunters who. We really don't like treasure hunters, do we?
No, not particularly.
No. But they didn't. The good part is that they didn't have anything to do with it, or didn't want anything to do with it, because that's not the shit they were looking for.
Right.
They found it and they thought, well, that might be Blackbeard's ship, but we're busy looking for this one. So they called the state of North Carolina and said, we're going to let you do it. So. I can't believe anybody would pass up Blackbeard's ship.
Right.
But apparently all they wanted was money, and Blackbeard's he's a pirate. He took the money off of his ship, so they just didn't care for them. He didn't leave any gold coins on the thing anyway. They figured that. And so the North Carolina took it over, and the conservation efforts was in 1996, I think, began. And it wasn't until I think about 2014, 2015 that they actually found enough and then confirmed that it was Teach's ship. Although every professor I had would always correct me and say, well, the ship we think might be Blackbeard's ship. And I'm like, yeah.
Uh-huh. I guess an archaeologist need a lot of evidence to be able to say, like, yes, this is.
Yeah, before they can definitively say, well, but by that point, I had learned about all the evidence we'd found so far. And I'm like, it damn well, it's Blackbeard's ship. So, quit that mess, Although there's some people today who will say that it's not, but it is. It definitely.
Right. Yeah, I think there's a overwhelming, and I think you're right. They were so careful with excavating it, and they were really careful with coming out and saying yes, for sure it was.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But how did it get there? I mean, you talked a little bit about how it was discovered. How did it come to be where it's at?
Oh, okay. What happened was they had to come in they were trying to go to Beaufort, and so they came in at the harbor. They called it Topsail Inlet at the time. Of course, Topsail Inlet's now applied to a different inlet in North Carolina, and it was really named Beaufort. Well, it's named Beaufort Inlet today, but they call it Topsail then, which is so confusing. But anyway, they had to make this approach, and at there's a bar at the approach, and you have to be careful not to get close to the bar with the ship. The problem is the shifting waters in North Carolina, the shoal waters all shift all the time. And so, you can't really be certain where that bar is at any particular time. You can sort of say, well, it's probably over here somewhere. Well, if you're not from there, and you don't have a pilot on board, maybe that knows the waters that well, you could possibly hit that bar. Well, that's what they did. They hit the bar, and they ran aground. Didn't do it on purpose. I know it's my opinion, but it's my opinion after studying the records intensely. And I can tell you that nobody blamed Teach for wrecking that ship on purpose except for one person. And that person got immunity from prosecution for turning state's evidence. So I'm not exactly going to believe that guy for anything.
Right. He's suspect. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's a snitch.
Yeah.
That's what we call a snitch today.
Snitch, exactly. There was only two names that were not listed. It was him and David Harriet and his buddy Ignatius Pell. And when you look at it, the deposition was actually like 5 pages long. But the first 4.5 pages, like everything except for the last paragraph, was all David Harriet. So obviously David Harriet's the one that basically did the tattling and lying. And the last paragraph, Ignatius Pell said, yeah, what he said.
Right.
So
yeah.
I'm like, okay, so Ignatius Pell basically was just there to say, yeah, whatever him. And he didn't say anything. So David Harriet told the whole story and probably lied his ass off.
Right.
So he said that he did it on purpose. But if you look at the depositions of all the other people, or not depositions, but the trial records where they talk to them and ask them what happened. And, and they all tell them, says, well, this is when they make a reference like, well, this is where Teach lost his ship. It's like, well, that doesn't mean he wrecked it. That just means he lost it. Like if he lost a ship, that's the way anybody would refer to it.
Right.
And then, so nobody actually in any language whatsoever blamed Teach for wrecking that ship. So, and also we never found bodies in the water. There were no indication that anybody ever found them. Nobody ever, tried to sue Teach, which was very common at the time. So, I mean, it's like, oh, well, that guy had right to have me killed. I want to get some of that gold for myself. But nobody ever did that. He had some kind of money, but nobody ever tried to go after it. It was very suspicious that he would try that he got blamed for this.
It seems like he's getting a bad rap just this whole time.
Yeah, exactly, because he's dead. He didn't write the history; somebody else did, and that's usually not the truth. So anyway, he wrecked he accidentally wrecked the ship. There was also evidence that that David Harriot's ship, the Adventure, had been used to pull his ship, the QAR, off the bar. They used a kedge anchor. Where you put an anchor back like behind the ship, and then you use your capstan to try and pull the cable to pull the ship off the bar, while the anchor, using the rope for the anchor. To pull the ship off. And there's evidence that they did this. And so it's very unlikely that he wrecked it on purpose. Although if you talk to people like David Moore, not to mention names, but anyway, you talk to him, he's saying, oh, well, he did it on purpose. Like, he just wants him to be true. It's not true. But so that he wrecked it. He didn't mean to wreck his ship, but he did. So they had to get the gold off and all that. They salvaged everything they could of value. And that was when Teach and Bonnett basically at that point decided to go their separate ways. Of course, because, not much was holding the two together by this point, because Teach is thinking, this guy, he's a lover. He doesn't know anything about the sea. And it's like, I don't know why I'm dealing with this guy in the first place. So he's probably going to try to get rid of him at the first opportunity. And yeah, I do believe he basically tricked him. He knew that Bonnett was going to be an issue, kind of somebody to deal with at this point, and he had to get rid of him in a way that I guess just got him out of the way without causing too much trouble.
Right. So what happened to Steve? I mean, we're supposed to meet up with him right now, but these guys keep trying to attack me. So what had eventually had happened to Steve Bonnett? We know that Blackbeard died.
Well, Steve Bonnett, he decided he wanted to go off and be a pirate on his own, which was probably very ill-advised. But he decided that was what he was going to do. And so he had gotten his ship ready to go. And at that point, Edward Teach and his men decided to, Steve Bonnett had gotten into a rowboat, a small boat, and maybe not a rowboat, but like a launch, small launch, and headed to Bath to get the pardon from the governor and clearance to basically go off to St. Thomas to go pirate or become a privateer in St. Thomas against the Dutch. He's like, okay, well, as long as you don't attack English ships. And he goes, oh, cross my heart, man.
Yeah. Pirate's honor, right?
Yeah, pirate's honor, cross my heart. This is America, man. We know what you're gonna do. Okay, you're lying through your teeth. So he went to go get that. Once he got out of the way, that's when Teach and his men attacked the Revenge. And it's now called the Royal James. new name for a new ship and a newly minted sailor of the high seas. And I'm really, tongue in cheek kind of thing. Yeah. And so he attacks not attacks the ship, but basically takes it over, and he takes all the men that were, all of Bonnett's men, and puts them on a small island. And it wasn't a huge island where it had resources. It was a small spit of land, which is what, one of the things that David Harriet probably told the truth about. And it was a small spit of land with nothing on it. And I found an island that very well describes, or that very well matches the description. And I forgot what it was, but anyway, it was right next to the channel that most ships use to get through Core Sound. And because they were not out in the ocean at this time, they're in the Sound waters. And so I think he marooned them on that island because it was right by the channel. So the next ship that came by was going to see them on the island anyway, and pick them up, which is exactly what happened. When Steve Bonnett came back from Bath, he rides by and he's like, "Hey, wait a minute! Isn't that my crew standing out there in that small spit of land?" He's like, "Yeah, sure is. What the hell happened? Why is my crew out there?" And then he finds his, he gets his crew and he takes them and he's like, what happened? Oh, well, Teach took the ship, blah, blah, blah. And like, oh yeah. Well, they get in the boat. He gets a few of them. I'm assuming as many as he could pick up, I'm sure. And then he takes them back, goes to find the Royal James. It's still there. Teach didn't steal the ship. Teach left his ship, took the small one. He didn't want the Revenge. He just wanted the smaller boat, the one that became the Second Adventure. If you follow it by names, you get confused because there's two adventures now. But anyway, it was probably an old Spanish vessel.
Okay.
So Teach took command of that one. It was with only about 20 men. He really, it had like 8 guns, whereas the Royal James had 12. So he could have had a bigger ship, but he took the small one. So, I mean, why would he do that? He could have had the Revenge. I mean, Royal James. I keep trying to call her Revenge, but anyway, he could have had that, but he took the little guy, and he left basically everything for Teach to have on the ship. He didn't take much except some of the provisions, some food, maybe some ropes and tackle that they might use, stuff that stuff that Bonnett could easily replace, with the stores that Beaufort probably had. Mm-hmm. And so he didn't really put Bonnett in a bad way. He wanted Bonnett to leave. He didn't want him to hang around, and because he was a nuisance. Yeah. He wanted to get rid of the guy. So I think that's when Bonnett left. Now there's a story about Bonnett going off and trying to find Teach after this, but real mad. It may be he was making up a big show for his crew. Like, yeah, I'm going to go get but if he ever caught Teach, he would have soiled himself, I'm sure. the guy's not happy with me, and I know it, and he's a whole lot more capable than I am. And I'm sitting here going, piss on you. And he's like, that's stupid, man. So, yeah, he probably never wanted to catch him. And, right. So he made a little show of it. Of course, Bonnett's crew, these are mariners. These guys know what's going on, and they probably knew the whole time this guy's, full of crap. So, but they said, as long as he's, paying us, we're good.
Mm-hmm. It's so amazing how much information. And then, we're almost at our hour here. So I just wanted to see it, like, for people that are interested that can learn more about all of this history. Can you tell them where they can go and what books they can buy that you've written that discuss this?
Yeah. Well, my book, Quest for Blackbeard, tells the ebook version, the one, the most updated, has the most recent information. That's probably everything you want to know about Blackbeard. There's another pamphlet on Blackbeard called Murdered Ocracoke that tells in detail what happened to his crew when he got murdered, for one thing, by Spotswood, and what happened to the money and everything on. But I mean, everybody was a pirate. The corruption was bad, and that book talks a lot about the corruption. I've written another book about pirates called Sailing East, which is actually kind of funny what happens to these guys, because they're not lubbers like Bonnett, but they do some crazy stuff, and it's just damn stupid sometimes what they do. So it's a fun book to read for that, but it's also a chance I took to really give it to Charles Johnson. That book, I really tore Charles Johnson a new a-hole. And, I explained how to do proper research, which means you don't use crap like that.
Right. Yeah. And I think people still rely on that quite a bit. So, yeah. And so people can go to your website. Do you know the name? I guess you should know the name of it, but I could put it on the description below of this video.
Yeah. It's my name, Baylus Brooks, Baylus Brooks.com.
Great. Yeah. So people definitely check out BaylusBrooks.com, Quest for Blackbeard, all the other amazing research that Baylus has done. Baylus, thanks again for playing this game, Assassin's Creed Black Flag.
Yeah.
And before we take off, I just wanted to get your guys' take. So we'll start with Tristan. What did you think of this game so far?
I mean, it's an Assassin's Creed game. It looks like they've done a lot of research. I don't know that it's historically accurate, but it seems a reasonable representation as far as I know.
The visuals are wonderful.
Yeah.
Right.
Although the ship's sailing through shoal waters like that,
that looked a little suspicious to me too.
Yeah, when it's that light blue, it's not the bottom's real close to the surface. And you're not going to get a big ship through there. So anyway,
so they could work on some of those mechanics. But this was a fun game. Maybe we can bring Baylus back sometime and play some more of this, because I know there's so much more to cover that we didn't get to. But I want to thank you again, Baylus, for joining us. We don't have another Archaeology Arcade scheduled just yet. We may do one next week on Friday, same time, 12 p.m. But we'll get that put up if we do end up doing that on our Facebook page as an event. So we always appreciate people coming on and joining us. We will put this up on our YouTube channel probably next week. If you want to comment or like or subscribe to our page, it's always really helpful. And we'll plan some more of these pretty soon.
Yep.
Fun.
Sounds great.
It was fun.
Yeah. All right. We'll see y'all later.
Yep. Bye all.
Bye-bye. Nice meeting you.